All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that we're all here. Good morning, everyone. Sorry about that. Let's take care of that. All right. Anyway, welcome back, everyone. If you're new to the channel, welcome here. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you for being here, for taking the time to be part of your own awakening process as we journey through this together. If you are new here, I like to remind people, as always, that when you interact with this content, either through subscription, through liking, through commenting, through sharing, it actually does support the channel and influence the AI algorithm that will suggest this to more people in their feed or just spread it to a wider audience. So if you find it helpful and if you find it inspiring and you think it'll help other people as well, that's a great way that you can support this offering. So let's get into it for today. Curious, how was that release valve for everyone in the last 24 hours when we talked about that with Venus and Scorpio? How was that release valve? Did anybody freak the fuck out yesterday? I know I did. I freaked the fuck out yesterday. And thankfully it did happen. It was a release valve that was very much needed. And remember, Venus is at her detriment in Scorpio. What does that mean? In astrology, that means that she or the planet itself is in a sign that is opposite. Sorry, I keep looking over there because I'm burning this Palo Santo. And she is in the sign. The planet of Venus is in the sign opposite of its home territory, so least powerful in this instance. Venus is a very hard time in Scorpio because she is sensitive to the world around her. She wants what makes her feel good. Archetypally, right? We're talking about the object of our desires, what allows us to feel comfortable and secure and safe and cozy and harmonious and beautiful. And in Scorpio, it is the depth of feeling, the full-on feels, and for better, for worse, for good or for bad, the whole truth and nothing but the truth is in Scorpio. And that can be a very difficult position to have Venus in. So if you have Venus in Scorpio, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. It also tends to make the acquisition of things, right? What we value and the pulling towards us, the attracting towards us, and the magnetism of what it is that we value tends to get a little obsessive, and you could just never go deep enough. And so, but the downside to that is that we can have a tendency to drown ourselves in our delusions, right? Our intoxications of relationship and resources, and drown in our own swamp in some ways. So that Seven of Cups in the tarot is very much about Venus and Scorpio. So how was it? I will check in with the chat in a little bit, see if anybody has anything to say about that in terms of their own release valve. I definitely freaked out yesterday. And not like, anything out of the realm of control, just what's going on in my family and my personal life just needed to come out in a very raw way. And so I'm curious if people were having that experience. Also curious if people were waking up, jolting awake in the middle of the night. So depending on where you are, maybe you never got to sleep until really late. If you're on the West Coast, if you're on the East Coast of the US or further east, you may have gotten woken up in the middle of the night. So I know that happened for me as well. So there's a couple things I want to clarify around this, because we do have this CME, this coronal mass ejection. We talked about it yesterday. It is expected to land, right? It's expected to land tomorrow. And we looked at the Friday astrology chart and how incredibly just complex and also very busy it is, but also beautifully balanced out at the same time. There's a lot of things happening tomorrow. Mars will be in opposition to Chiron. Mercury in its retrograde now is going to square Pluto again. There is a beautiful water trine today that happened, and that's why I'm curious about people's sleep and their dreams, because we had this water trine with Neptune, Venus, and a Cancer moon. So even in that experience of just freaking out, there was something to be felt very deeply in that process. And in some ways, the pressure release valve, the safety valve of our emotions and our feelings and the intensity of it allowed for some space to be created in order to really feel very deeply into where we are rooted and what is going to stabilize us as the dress rehearsal is over. I can't tell you how many people, and I thought this myself yesterday, I'm not gonna lie, many people in the last day or so I've seen on various social media chat rooms and just out in the interweb space, many people I've seen, and it's an uptick, something that I've noticed, that people are like, you know what? At this point, I'm fine with what's coming. Like if there's, the solar flash, the magnetic pole flip, it's a meteor, it's the return of Quetzalcoatl, it's a wormhole opening, we fall into whatever it is, people are like, you know what? I'm good. I'm good with it, because people are really reaching a point of, it's not so much hopelessness, but just being ready for it, being ready for something that is outside of our hands in some ways. So with today's transmission, the descent of power and the descent of the spirit can only come down when we've created a space for it, and we are very firmly rooted somewhere in order to be able to hold that. And the moon in Cancer certainly will allow for that to happen. And when we have this CME tomorrow, and I do suspect that a lot of what's going on certainly is manufactured chaos, and the contraction of the timeline in order to move things along quicker because of this critical mass that humanity has reached. But also too, I'm really working on trying to stay with my eye contact on the camera. It's really hard for me because it's just the way that I process information. Like I'm all over the place. So I know that could be distracting, and I know it's not very good for video content. So I'm trying. I really am. But in some ways, this is why it's better to just be like radio and broadcasting just my voice, so I don't have to worry about this. But anyway, this CME that's coming now, keep in mind that there's a lot of people that are going to harness the fear factor of this as like there's going to be some major thing. No, it's, we're in solar maximum right now. These are normal types of things happening. Yes, the magnetic field of the planet is weaker. And so there is this sense that we're being impacted on some level a lot more, or certainly more intensely. And I do feel like that a lot of what's happening in the last day or so, especially since the CME left the sun, is on its way. I do feel like that is impacting people energetically and in their sleep and their whole process. But if you look at the astrology, that in itself is enough to reinforce a lot of these things that are unfolding, these fixed points in time that have an impact on us. But so I don't expect there to be anything other than minor geomagnetic disturbances, right? It's not going to be the solar kill shot, the internet's, and if the internet does go down, it's not going to be from that. But wouldn't that be a very convenient excuse, wouldn't it? So, but it's important not to understate how these activities actually impact us and the impact that they can have on our process as well. So there's just so much going on. So I hope that you've allowed yourself that safety valve to be opened, and for your deep feels to be, your raw and authentic deep feels to come through. Because as we get closer to, October, it's on. And when everything starts to move direct, there's no turning back from that now. And especially with Pluto, right? Once Pluto's engine kicks back on, it is like this massive machine that's going to come through and just like mulch everything, and there's nothing you can do about it. So at a level of our entire society, our entire culture, the institutions, and the framework of how we interact with reality, right? The things that we contribute together in creating as a structural form are being destroyed. And once Pluto starts moving direct again, that engine is going to turn back on. And so it's going to be important that we allow these safety valves, allow this frustration and this sadness and these feelings of anger and intensity to come through. And it's okay. It's okay. Now, some people, what I have also noticed is that there is a lot of feelings of just like, oh shit, this is at my door now. And, great for business, but at the same time, there's a sense of desperation now because people didn't really take it seriously. And now that the reality that, many people have been talking about for 2 years now of what's coming and longer, of course, is now here, there is a scrambling effect. And so again, if you're one of these people and you're finding you have to make some really tough decisions that are coming right to your doorstep, it's okay. Let your feelings move through you, because ultimately, when those channels are cleared out and you can allow for flow through you, you can use that energy as part of your manifestation process, right? So that you can allow yourself to be grounded and stable and confident in what's in your position and what you're doing. Because otherwise, when you're just so taken over by the intense emotion of a situation, sometimes it can really impact and impede your ability to make the right decision that your gut is trying to tell you to do, right? Your gut's never going to steer you wrong, but it's everything else that kind of builds on top of it that can be a huge distraction and can take you away from trusting your own intuition. So I hope everyone's doing well, taking good care of themselves if they can. And there's a couple things that, somebody pointed out to me today that, let's see here, that Kilauea just erupted. So there is a pressure release valve right there. And I've been watching these little cluster volcano or earthquakes in the last 2 days around that area. They've been so small that they've hardly been worth mentioning, but I have been watching them. And now Kilauea is, sorry guys. Now Kilauea is actually erupting. So in some ways, that was a release valve that we very much needed, right? Just like the earth needs to release pressure through the volcanoes and through these fissures and these, openings up to the surface, and we're no different, right? And I do feel like that with the CME, it might be minor, but it also is, I'm curious, is there something going on? Oh yeah. Hi, Emily. Is the stream okay? I took the day off, spent the day within studying things, then got a massage. Oh my God, I'd kill for a massage right now. If I had worked yesterday, I'm certain it would have been a very messy day. Yeah. By the end of my day yesterday, it was absolutely messy. By the time the end of my work day came, I was just like a total raging mess. And I was just like, I'm done. I'm not going to do anything but find things to laugh about. We talked about that yesterday too. Laughter is a deconditioning tool in keeping your mind independent and objective. So, wow. Let's see. But yeah, we do need these release points, and the volcano at Kilauea is definitely one part of it. And you can also see that around the Ring of Fire, there are a ton of earthquakes, little clusters all around the Ring of Fire. So the earth is no different than us. We are very much made of the same stuff here and have the same process. And we do need to make sure that we have a release valve and that we have pressure released. And so when we are ready to take in the descent of spirit, we are able to do so by being firmly rooted in who we are and stable, right? We want to be stable. So when that comes into us, right, and into our awareness, that we are able to hold it and use it for its highest purpose. So let's just get right into the reading for today. I'm going to bring it up because I get a sense here that we don't really like where we're at now, right? But here we are, and we still have to stay stable. We still have to stay present. We still have to be part of this process, even in the midst of not really enjoying the process or not liking what the end of this very material cycle is showing us. So let's see here. All right, guys. Here is our reading for today. I don't know why I'm just hyper fixated on what the stream is doing, because I'm always worried that there's something wrong with it. But Emily's here, so that certainly leads me to believe everything is fine and it's just a normal day. So let's see here. Here is, and I'm very distracted. I'm not going to lie. It's just like as soon as things seem like that they're going to be okay, then there is another thing that piles on top that is like an extra layer. So, and everything is here to, in some ways, to bring us to our courage and our strength, and is really conditioning us in a lot of ways to hold. And we talked about, this was a very big part of yesterday's reading, right? Is that we are kind of on a defensive stance against the onslaught of like the truth, the painful truth, and things that seem like they're out of our control. And there is a splitting apart and a release of pressure, right? With that temperance card being reversed. And so now we're here finding ourselves in that situation, kind of like, well, what are we supposed to do now? So the causal factor here coming into the moment, the 10 of discs, we know that this is the end of a material cycle, right? This is coming back around to where the richest potentials unfold. It's the completion of the material work, right? So when it's reversed, there can be a lot of greed for more because it's just never enough, right? Or you can just be kind of lazy and blind to what you have. But what I am feeling here, and specific to this card as our causal factor, is that we're really resisting or really just not liking the material results of the end of this material cycle. Like, we've gotten to the end, we have reaped what we have sown and cultivated, and we are holding it all, and we're like, I don't like this. This is either not enough. I don't like the quality of this. What is this? Some people are like, what is this? Some people going, oh, I didn't even expect this. That seems to be I'm seeing that a lot, that people are like, oh, why didn't we get started on things sooner? Or to something like that. And so there's a lot of resistance to the fact that whether you like it or not, the cycle has come around to a certain extent. And at the end of a lunar cycle, this is not unusual either. And we're going to come into, we're getting into the darker and darker moon phase. I mean, certainly the moon is in her waning gibbous and will soon be in that, once she is in Virgo, will be in her most balsamic, right? And so you come back around eventually to acquaint yourself with the new moon that this cycle was started with, and see what it is, and be, what are we receiving as a result of our work and our determination and our discipline with it, and what is it? And I feel that what we are starting to realize here on a collective level, this is not everybody at least, is that there is a collective resistance to what this is. And we're like, oh, I don't like this. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that, we should all be, you can still not like it and still feel a sense of, I can still do something about it now. Like, you can't go back in time and necessarily fix it. But what you can do, which I think is what's interesting about this reading, is that we find ourselves kind of going back in time in this present moment where we're at the 9 of discs, which is gain. So when it's Venus in Virgo, as opposed to Mercury in Virgo is at home, right? This is part of one of Mercury's territories is Virgo. And so the wealth is like that full culmination of everything that we have put our energy into bringing about. When you're talking about Venus, though, this is about really being sensitive and almost enjoying everything that has culminated. And so you really are pulling in the crops and you're settling down with it. And a lot of times this could be, obviously material in terms of resources, but also your health and your healing process. Virgo is very much about the healing process itself, either healing an illness, healing an injury, healing some sort of emotional wounding, whatever it is, it's the actual process of the healing that's in Virgo. And so when you have the 9 of discs, there's a sensitivity with Venus, an enjoyment sometimes with what, the culmination of the work. Now, when we come to when we start out going, I don't, you pull it all in and it's all unfolding, like the entire cycle is coming to an end and turning over and there's resistance to it. You kind of like reflect back in some ways to this point and you're like, okay, well, now I have to actually settle into what it is that I have sown and cultivated and see if it's successful or not. See if there is healing and maybe going back and really addressing this aspect. So not so much going back in time and fixing it, but being willing to actually be honest with yourself and to use your sensitivity to actually feel into this process and how you got to a point where maybe you are resisting the end of the cycle or not happy with where you've gotten at this point and what work that you've done. And so, yes, it's upright. And a lot of times this will reflect this will reflect this experience of like, look at everything that I've gained and really being sensitive to it. But considering where we are, and considering that Venus is in Scorpio right now, there is a sense too that being sensitive to what we have gained and what we have cultivated and what that really means doesn't necessarily mean we're gonna like it, but it does mean that we have to be honest with ourselves and realistic with it and look at it for what it is. I mean, that's a big part of this. And so, Venus is not happy in Scorpio. This is not where she wants to be, but it's in some ways she also has to just be real with herself. And we all have to be real with ourselves and sensitive to what actually is in balance and out of balance, and especially be sensitive to what we have actually gained. Now, that also in a positive light can say we don't like what has culminated at the end of this cycle, but what have we gained, right? There's something to be said for that too, to focus on our blessings and to focus on what we're grateful for and to see, wow, I may not necessarily like this, but this perspective that I've gained as a result of it is very valuable to me. And Venus is all about value. So when we look at where we can draw our power from, we are also looking at, the King of Keys. There's another earthbound and earth-oriented element here. So the king and royalty, right? So we embody this figure within ourselves, specifically where we are grounded and stabilized and rooted. And the king is royalty, confident, astute, focused on the work, right? There is a sense of, look at everything that I have. I'm on my way home. I've been out doing all of the things that I have needed to do in order to maintain my personal kingdom and all of my resources. And now I'm on my way back, right? So sometimes this card can represent being a little bit too focused on the work, but based on what's going on right now, I think, and the position we're finding it in, it does appear and it does feel like that this is not necessarily a bad thing, that we do want to draw our personal power from this confidence and authority on what we have done in order to secure our material resources. And that's all kinds of resources. Our health, our financial resources, our energetic resources, the actual land that we're on and what it produces for us. We can really stand to harness this identity in terms of where we are stabilized and where we draw our power from is being this king. And you're going to see, there's the queen right up here too. Now, speaking of where we release this energy or what is descending, we find ourselves brought around to the mental concept of how much time and energy and one foot in front of the other it takes to build something big. That's the other thing, is that, we're not going to turn things around on a dime at the last minute, right? We're talking about massive overhaul of global proportions at a species level, okay? Our awakening of consciousness and the evolution of humanity into into the world that we want to live in. It's not going to happen, just in the blink of an eye, right? It takes time. It takes meticulous focus. It takes measuring. It takes actual steps, and detail. So it's important that we're paying attention to the details, that we are measuring what we're doing, that we are making sure things are balanced and level, that we accept that it's going to take time and we don't get discouraged just because it's not done right now. And that it becomes more and more difficult to do as things get more and more real, because I'll tell you what, the things that are being implemented that really do compromise our health and our safety and our sovereignty have in fact been in play and in plan for a very long time. So people do understand this, and they have been very meticulously and patiently building this system that we can't expect is just going to turn around on a dime, unless all of humanity simultaneously is just like enough, right? There will be the descent of the spirit. I do feel like we're going to find ourselves, and this is why people are like, you know what? I'm fine with it. I'm surrendering to it. Whatever is coming, I want it, I'm fine with it coming, because we need help in some way from, I don't want to say that somebody's going to come save us, because it's not like that, but there is going to be this endowment of something. It's not outside of us, but it's going to seem like it's something that is not within us, but it is. But this is really putting out there that the best way we can focus our attention right now is the fact that these things take time and focus, and there are details, and it has to be done right, right? If it's not done right, it's going to fall apart. And what's the point of that? Okay. Now, where this is going based on all of these things, of course, the Two of Wands is dominion, right? This is a very basic idea that Mars in Aries, right? Mars in its home territory of Aries, which is very much about courage and determination and putting the spark of spiritual power and creativity into that first step into action, right? That first moment of differentiation into the two wands. And so when it's reversed like this, it does suggest restlessness, revenge, destruction. It also can represent just the activation of this energy within us as well. But I would say here that based on everything that we are seeing, that we have to exact some level of patience. Now, what comes to mind with this is that tomorrow, like I said earlier, is that Chiron and Mars will be in an exact opposition tomorrow on the 1st, right? With that incredible chart that we looked at, and then also the arrival of this very strong CME. So even if it's minor geomagnetic activity on a global scale, that doesn't mean that it's not impacting us on some level. And with the astrology being what it is, I feel like this is like an extra boost of activation. So certainly a sense of newness, a new enterprise, like the determination to start creating something new and to have all of this energy backing it and moving forward. When you see it reversed, it looks exactly the same, except that the head or the hilt, right, is of these jesters is face downward, and the spikes or the points of the daggers or the spears are facing upwards. And so again, this could also identify that, again, the restlessness and the seeking of revenge and more of an acting out of anger. And again, this is why this release valve yesterday was so important, because if we didn't have an opportunity to really let go of these really deep, raw, intense feelings in some way, I do feel like that this will manifest itself very much in that restlessness and destructive behavior. And regardless of how you are managing yourself right now, I do see that this potential with Mars and Chiron in an opposition is very much here. And then you have Mercury square to Pluto again. So really being challenged to see the transcendent meeting in within ourselves and in the face of very destructive tendencies with Pluto being Pluto. So just be aware of how much we could be swept into this if we are not in this axis of our power, like very presently and very strongly. So let's see here. We also have some guidance here if this is a struggle for you. One of the things is that the Buddha prepares being reversed is very much about taking action now, right? You're leaving your state of preparation and moving into action. The period of waiting has come to an end, and it's time to move with certainty and with courage. And so if people have been kind of like sitting back, not really doing anything about what is coming down the pipeline in their life, they're going to feel a sense of urgency. And this also suggests that it's time to start taking action. The King of Keys went out and actually did things and does things to secure his kingdom and his resources. And if we want to harness that power and that identity, we absolutely need to come out of our period of inactivity and period of waiting and move forward. And we have the meerkat, we're not alone in this, right? I mean, we're not doing this alone. It's important that we realize that we are all surrounded by people who are on the same page as us, whom we love and love us, who are also ready to take action. There's many people that have been at work for a while now, actually putting things into place. They've also been that mason that's been building this massive cathedral and realizing it literally takes one step at a time, one action at a time to build these massive structures, either physical or cultural or even energetic, right? So you don't have to be alone. You have to seek out the people who are also taking action, who are like-minded and are in a position to, we're in a position to support each other. So we're not alone. When we look at where we can put our attention, where we can release our power, and certainly where our conscious awareness is, and where, when the descent of spirit and how it has an impact on our perspective. The spider, this card says, trust the creative spark and write stories. But if you think about it from a much broader context of how potent the spider is in terms of healing and medicine and the weaving of our reality and the feminine nature, and you have the Queen of Keys along with it right over here. So the feminine nature, the feminine nature of creating a space, of weaving and putting all the pieces together, creating something that holds. It's a very Cancerian thing, right? The Cancer archetype represents the lattice structure of our families, of our tight emotional bonds, of who we love, our tribal or regional or national identity, however, your clan, where you belong, who you have pride in, and your loyalty goes to. If you think about it even more naturally, I guess that's the best way to put it, or certainly more archetypally, the spider. I mean, she is literally from her own body is weaving the web that not only allows her to harvest her own food, but this is also her home and where she is able to have lay eggs. And there's something to be said about this as well. It takes time. It takes, the spider does it instinctually right from her body. And we can do that too, but it doesn't happen just like, oh, I want to build this web and now it's here, right? The spider actually has to take the time to do it, find the right place, and make the web. And it has to be geometrically balanced, right? It can't be all over the place. I mean, if you've ever seen a spider web that is completely discordant and doesn't make any sense, it's not going to hold anything, right? It's not going to actually function. So, and there's this feminine aspect that we bring in now with this, that we have to create the space, that we have to take what we have available to us in our own instinctual nature and do so. And then the Queen of Keys is just adding to this, right? Another identity to embody and another royal position of confidence in what we have, authority in the feminine, right? The spider is not questioning her authority. I mean, she is stepping into her role as the creator of this space. And so the Queen of Keys, again, is an authority in the feminine aspect of our resources, confident and helpful and sensitive and very much about creating a space, right? She's home. She's looking out at the king who's on his way home because he's been out being a king. And she's there taking care of things and really she looks like she's very delighted and excited that he's coming back. So there's also this synthesis type of thing that's coming in terms of our, the polarity coming together and bringing these two aspects together. But it's going to take time, right? And we have to take action, but we have to take considered and patient action because what is coming is certainly the potential to be very reckless and to turn that courage and determination into some sort of explosive and destructive energy because we don't like and we are very much resisting the fulfillment of this cycle in a material way. And I've seen this in the last 2 days, like really unfolding in a lot of different ways. And we're all experiencing it too. That's the thing. It's like, and if you're not, it's coming for you. Like, I don't know what else to say. I don't think anybody gets away at this point with living side by side with tyranny and not having it come and affect their actual life eventually, because nothing's going to stop the attempted unrolling of this very insidious plan that has been in place for a very long time. So that's our reading for today. Let's look at the astrology to see how to support this and kind of get an idea of what's been going on in the cosmos here. And let's see. All right, guys, here we go. Here is our chart for today. Now, there's a couple things that are really quite beautiful. First of all, let's go back just a couple hours here and show you this grand trine that we had with Venus in Scorpio. We'll get to Jupiter. Neptune in Pisces, right? Neptune in Pisces, and the moon in Cancer, which is her home territory of Cancer. And so this trine, look at this. This is, 4:40 a.m. So again, anytime overnight, especially with the moon moving through Cancer, like it's just getting deeper into that intuitive and psychic realm, getting deeper into our own feelings, deeper into what grounds us and stabilizes us to this world. And when we're sleeping, especially, this is when we have access to those deeper subconscious realms that we don't often get direct access to in our waking life because we're so inundated with other stimuli that it becomes very difficult. This is really why meditation is so important. It's not really, it certainly allows you to be calmer and to find a sense of well-being, but that's not really, what it's for, right? It's not meant to be stress relieving. That's like a byproduct of it. What it does allow you to do is get into your subconscious more and to understand that realm so you can actually be conscious about what you're creating, because that's where it's coming from, is your subconscious. So when you're dreaming or when you're asleep, you have a lot more access to this realm. And so this trine is very beautiful and very intense. Right? Very intense, but very beautiful, because we find in the beginning of this trine with the moon and Neptune, as we are still, Neptune dissolving everything down to nothing more than a direct experience of, a direct peak experience that has to be somehow applied to daily life. And in its retrograde, we certainly are experiencing that on an internal level. The trine to this Cancer moon, we're leaving ourselves open and receptive to what that is going to eventually lead to, right? And so we have to create a space. There has to be a space created, and there has to be a sense of stillness within us in order to even receive that. And that really supported that. And then when the moon comes into the exact trine with Venus and makes this trine like complete, this is where, when we leave that space open and allow in the inspiration, direct flow right into the core of who we are, then we can have a very objective and sometimes, and especially now, a critical approach to what is happening in our world without, it's like you can emotionally be involved in it, but it's also very objective. This is the degree of those who are on the leading edge, because they are poets and they're writers and they are people who are able to emotionally and intuitively see the underlying structures that are causing problems in a society and are able to give voice to it through their own expression, right? And so Venus now is working with an energy very specifically today, which is about taking those instinctual drives that really were part of the release valve from yesterday and having them transform into something way more potent, because we all have these instinctual aggressive drives. We all have that nature at the depth of who we are in our shadow, in our underworld, that is just part of being human. The trick now is the hacking of it, right? Where you hack your own shadow and you take that animal instinctive drive that you know is there and find a way to transform it into a much more subtle and potent form that actually is the substance of manifestation and healing, right? And so this is also the work of the shaman. So this is, Venus is not necessarily taking any action. That's the thing about Venus. She just is an attractor. So it's hard for her to actually, and she's not meant to, she incarnates the feminine. So it's not about necessarily taking action on her part. But in this instance, there's something about the transubstantiation of this very deep and authentic, but very raw, instinctive nature that can be transformed into something way more potent and usable for, healing purposes and to take our and to evolve, basically. So this particular trine here, it's like when we do that, we actually allow ourselves to see much more deeply into what is going on and to get a clearer and deeper look at the underlying problems and structures in a society, that we can take an objective viewpoint. Because if we're still connected to these instinctual drives and these kind of like animal urges, this is where we act out when we are faced with the reality of these really critical problems in a society. But when we're able to really transubstantiate that into something at a higher, more elemental level, as opposed to a base like instinctual level, it allows us to be more objective about what is going on in our society that's worthy of critique, and giving it some power through our emotional expression, but also being objective enough to be like, this is what's going on, without getting pulled into the rage or the urge for revenge or to be aggressive. Is trying really, I think, really allow, in some ways it depends on how you're seeing it, that it was really anchoring in this energy. And it really depends on how masterful we really are in terms of our own emotional and our spirit, right? The water element of our spirit moving through us. So as we move through today, right? Where are we at here? That was this morning. And then at the same time, this is where we want to talk about Jupiter, right? Because you can see the quincunx, that green line with Jupiter retrograde. And this degree that Jupiter is in is really challenging us, each of us in our own internal landscape, to really find that discipline of these energies of the collective, right? We can really, everything is a training potential, and we can take that very potent and very strong energy of the human collective, right, or society as a whole. We can tap into that and use it if we are disciplined and if we are trained and we are taking that very seriously. And Jupiter is so expansive, and it's expansive within us right now, and it's retrograde, and advocates. It gives us whatever we need in order to reach whatever goal or conclusion, or defends the value of that very much so. The thing about the quincunx that we will need to adjust ourselves with is that this is the alchemical moment, because within us, we're just like, oh, this is what's wrong. And I feel it at the core of who I am. Like, this is the root of these problems in society. And I feel it very deeply. It's very much close to my emotional landscape, and it's in my intuition. The transmutation and the alchemy in this moment is being able to hold that, while at the same time not allowing ourselves to, again, get back into these base animal drives, but to really find that discipline and to find the training that we've gone through in so many other situations in our lives to bring us to a place where we can very masterfully harness and handle the energy of a social collective, the energy of the future, the energy of innovation, the energy of Aquarius, right? In a way that's very trained and very disciplined. And if we can find the adjustment here in this moment, boy, oh boy, we can really step into some powerful mastery and to really weave that web and step into this royal type of identity in terms of our authority over our reality, right? And this is not a new theme. This is continuing to come up. Now, this is where, and what we're going to find is that Venus is in a square to, by the end of today, will be in a square to Jupiter directly. And so you'll see right there that will be highlighted from a very sensitive, value-based connection with Venus, right? Trying to take those base drives and turn them, transubstantiate them into something more potent and usable. It seems like those two things should not be squaring each other, but you're talking about fixed water with Scorpio and fixed air with Aquarius. One is using the intellect and the mind, and the other is just feeling right into it. And this is where this square is really going to be highlighted about how we do this and what mechanisms that we use to do it. And if you lean into that discomfort, there is such a growth potential by the end of today that we really need it, right? Because otherwise, again, we fall into the trap of that Two of Wands being reversed, where we just get sucked into the base animal drives of revenge and anger and this raw, reckless feeling that is represented by that reverse Two of Wands. So this square here is very potent and very necessary. So what else do we have? Well, we have the moon coming into an opposition with Pluto and squaring Mercury. So we have a T-square. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that the square from both of these opposing objects is this point is going to be the release point. And so we see that Mercury is retrograde. It's in conjunction still with Arcturus, coming to a conjunction with fixed star Spica. Our ability to see a transcendent meaning in everything that happens, right? And the lens is now turned inwards. So we're really focusing our mental activity inwards about how these types of events are allowing us to see that meaning within us, and not gathering the information from outside of us, but gathering it from our own internal experiences, our own mental processes, the information and knowledge that we gather from ourselves. Because this opposition with Pluto and the moon in Cancer, while Pluto is destroying everything that we rely upon as reality, the moon in Cancer at this position is basically that descent of the spirit, right? There's a willfulness we're very willful, and we're setting ourselves up by through our willful endeavors, right? That's the Buddha prepares reverse, taking action, integrating of the personality through positive willful endeavors. And when we do that, there's a response of spiritual forces that comes and not only gives us inner strength, but is like the descent of this spiritual power coming in. It's like we're creating the container through our own actions and character in order for this to come in. And the opposition to Pluto is just like, reality is out there, and the entire matrix of reality is being pulled away thread by thread by Pluto right now, which is happening within us, right? We are experiencing it in a way that is much more of like a blueprint of it happening, or getting like the baseline of it happening. And then when it stations direct, it's actually going to start like literally pulling the thread out from under us, the carpet out from under us. So in this moment, even though those things are opposing, the way that we harness that energy is by turning the lens inward of our mental capacity, our thoughts, and our inner knowledge to realize that there is a transcendent meaning through all of these really difficult experiences that we can learn from. And certainly we want to keep acting on things so that we can get the descent of this spiritual power. But it's not necessarily going to come exclusively from that. We're going to have to really look to this Mercury retrograde. And remember, Arcturus and Spica, these are both starseed positions. They both denote a very strong connection to the collective, to balance, to offering, to service, to transmission. Both of these things together it's important. There is something more than just the self that is represented by Arcturus and Spica, and especially with the starseeds there. So again, if you know that you have these starseed connections, this is a great way to connect into these origins and traits for yourself to really get the most out of what is already blueprinted in yourself, right? And even if you don't have these positions in your chart, or you don't even know what your starseed origins are, you can still allow your mind to focus inward with the reception of what these starseed locations really represent. Deep knowledge, deep wisdom, the application of these things in order to find a balance, the success through brilliance and integrity, right? The head of the grain of wheat representing all of the culmination of our work and effort that is then being offered up as service. All of these things can be, they can be shown through the lens that is now turned within. And so we can take those perspectives and turn them towards ourselves and really gather something from within through our mental capacity as well. So that's going to do it for today right now, because tomorrow is going to be intense, number one. And so I want to make sure that we have, that I have the energy to really speak to tomorrow's energy as well. Like on a personal level, my personal energy, and being able to hold space for the collective energetic experience that is going to be coming through tomorrow and the beginning of October. So thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. Let's see. They want us, I'm going to look at the chat real quick. They want us to focus on the symptoms and ignore the actual problems. I would totally, absolutely agree with that. That seems to be kind of their MO. And when the symptoms can no longer be propped up, though, I totally agree with that as well. When you realize that the symptoms are an extension of a much deeper systemic problem, just like when you are sick all the time and you finally are just like, it's not the symptoms, I need to actually start dealing with what's out of balance in the system. And that is certainly where we're at right now. And I really appreciate that that perspective and that feedback, because that's what's happening. Now, like I said, we've reached critical mass. And so that's part of it too, is that people are starting to become aware, very much so, and will continue to be like, oh, damn, what is going on? And, their playbook is old and stale. That's all they have, is to just keep putting the symptoms up in front of us going, this is the problem, and controlling both sides of it. And it's not going to keep working. It's just not going to keep working. So, but, and they don't have any other, they don't, like I said, it's an old stale playbook. They don't have anything else but the chessboard. So if we can see that and we can just finish the game and just be like, we're done now, and I'm not playing anymore, then they got nothing left. But I know that actually translates to very real and very, in some ways, very dangerous and impactful decisions that people can't turn back away from. So yeah, it's going to be okay, guys. It really is. It's intense, and the danger is very real, right? The danger is very real. It's just that we can't, if we succumb to the fear, then we are paralyzed and not able to do anything. And we need to take action in some way. You know what I mean? We can't just keep putting our heads in the sand or just keep being distracted by the symptoms, because eventually you have to start coming to terms with where those symptoms are coming from. And I think that's happening. I think that's absolutely happening. So I appreciate each and every one of you so much. Thank you for being here. I'm still offering the flash sale for $77 for a bundle for Reiki treatment and the reading for the October lunar cycle. So you can book that through catalystenergies.net. That's in the description box below. You can also just email me if you're interested in that. And I take payment through PayPal and Venmo. So it's really easy. And it's starting to book up. So, I mean, the new moon is on the 6th. So if you're trying to get a reading before that happens, so to see what's going on, I would suggest that you get on my schedule now. So we'll be together tomorrow. We'll do the new moon general astrology report. We'll look at the astrology for the weekend and through the week, and we'll really dive into the chart for the new moon. If you haven't checked out the equinox to solstice report, we look at everything up to the solstice and all the major transits, and it's very much a pattern that's unfolding because you can see how everything is traveling together, right? And, we have Mars, we have the Sun, we have Mercury and Libra. They're all going to move into Scorpio and then into Sag, and Venus is kind of heading the pack here in terms of allowing us to be sensitive to it in our actual physical reality in our bodies before we start addressing it from our minds and our action and even our expression of self. So, and over the course of the next couple months, all of these planets and Chiron, the asteroid, is going to station direct all by the time we get to the solstice. That is really intense. So if you want to see how things are going to unfold for you, you can certainly book a service with me. And let's see, Telegram, Facebook, social media for what it is. It's still available if you want to catch up there. And so we'll see each other tomorrow, my friends. Thank you so much for being here. I love you. Take very good care of yourself. Give yourself space to release any intensity if you need to in whatever way needs to happen, so you can make room for, a much deeper knowing and awareness of who you are, because you're going to need it. We're all going to need it as we go forward. So take care, guys. I'll